Nebohtes here. I had the good fortune to be linked up with BF Manticore, who has been providing the Star Citizen community with a number of free piece scripts and how-to information concerning Arena Commander. We both wanted to answer the question, what is interactive mode? Fortunately for me, BF Manticore has gone far beyond the empirical testing I'm capable of and has been generous enough to share his findings and make this video. Let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Interactive mode is the default mouse mode, and its function is to provide interactive mode users with the ability to both aim gimbals and fly their ship simultaneously. Let's talk about the individual elements of interactive mode. The first element is the aim layer. This is the rectangular box in which the interactive mode user can aim their gimbals with one-to-one correspondence with their mouse. This is different from all other control modes and can only be used by the mouse in interactive mode. In this example, you can see how mapping the joystick to the aim layer gives a different result than mapping the mouse to the same options. When we say one-to-one, we mean that the cursor moves within the aim layer freely on a static plane, so interactive mode has one-to-one movement with the mouse, whereas look-ahead mode does not. In this example, you can see interactive mode respond to the mouse cursor and look-ahead mode respond to the joystick. It should be clear the difference in movement of the cursor. While in look-ahead mode with the joystick, the cursor struggles to move away from the bore sight. Let's compare interactive mode to the alternate mouse mode called relative mode. Relative mode locks the cursor to the center of the screen, and pitch and yaw become relative to the input of the mouse. Using the same test, interactive mode on the mouse and relative mode on the mouse with look-ahead mode, you can see that even using the same controller, there is a definite difference in off-bore deflection using the interactive mode cursor. The interactive mode aim layer is larger than the aim area for look-ahead mode, using either the joystick or mouse relative mode. This also causes the flight inputs for interactive mode to be scaled asymmetrically to compensate, so you have to move the cursor more horizontally to achieve the same rotational speed as you would achieve vertically with less VJOY deflection. The next element of interactive mode is the dead zone. This is a large area in which IM allows the user to aim without moving the ship. So, what is different about the interactive mode dead zone, the dead zone, and a joystick or controller dead zone? Well, in interactive mode, aim is applied before flight control, rather than having aim be a byproduct of flight control. In joystick or gamepad controller options, you can increase the dead zone of the controller, which increases the amount of deflection needed before output begins. Because this is a controller option, there is no aim within the controller dead zone for obvious reasons. In look-ahead mode for a joystick, off-bore deflection is a byproduct of flight, whereas in interactive mode, the dead zone doesn't affect anything until aim exceeds it. Aim in interactive mode precedes flight input, whereas with look-ahead mode, aim and flight are simultaneous. While using interactive mode, aim is allowed within the dead zone, while in look-ahead mode, nothing happens until the controller's dead zone is exceeded. They are two entirely different things. The final component of interactive mode is the flight layer. The flight layer of interactive mode is an abstraction of the axes that directly control aiming the ship, which we're referring to as flight. With the large dead zone, it divorces flight from pilot control and abstracts it. This is an image that illustrates the flight layer mapped onto the aim layer. The grid lines represent 10% changes in pitch and yaw values. See how the flight axes wrap around the dead zone to allow for its existence? This is a picture of the aim layer mapped to the flight layer. The grid lines represent a 54 pixel shift of the mouse in either X or Y. As you can see, just moving up and down on the aim layer results in changes of both pitch and yaw on the flight layer. The interactive mode user no longer has direct control over pitch and yaw, but only direction and turn rate, as direction is unaffected and turn rate is a product of the cursor's distance from the center. With a joystick, flight is not abstracted by dead zones because it employs axis-specific dead zones which never warp the axes. Additionally, the flight layer is limited to a circle, rather than a square. This further limits pilot control by setting a maximum turn rate if pitch and yaw values are similar. Outside of this circle, since the aim layer is rectangle, the flight layer only registers changes in direction. The flight layer also becomes more asymmetrically scaled when the screen resolution yields a more oblong rectangular shape for the aim layer. This further divorces flight from pilot control as the interactive mode user is not controlling pitch and yaw with the same scaling. If you look closely, you can see the awkward squashing of the x-axis when it is scaled down from being a rectangle to being a square. Interactive mode also has several user-defined preferences under control options for the mouse to change the cursor's response to the user's input, including sensitivity, acceleration, and smoothing. Sensitivity is merely changing how far the user moves the mouse in relation to how far the cursor moves on the screen. Lowering the sensitivity reduces the distance the mouse moves on the screen in relation to how far the user moves the mouse. Acceleration is something like a curve. The faster the user moves the mouse, the higher the sensitivity becomes. As long as the user moves the mouse slowly, the cursor on the screen will move at the sensitivity setting. But as the user moves the mouse faster, the cursor will move farther, as if the sensitivity had been raised. Finally, there is mouse smoothing, which only directly influences the way the cursor moves in relation to the user's mouse. It is essentially dampening for the cursor. Increasing this setting dampens the cursor response to the mouse's input, resulting in a slow and smooth response from the cursor regardless of how frenetic the input. Just to be clear, this only directly affects the cursor. It does not directly impact the flight response. Increasing the mouse smoothing reduces the frenetic or twitch response in the cursor. Additionally, interactive mode has an adjustable curve, also under control options for the mouse, called virtual joystick mode. Increasing the curve increases the dead zone, reduces flight response nearer the dead zone, and increases flight response farther away from it. A common misunderstanding about interactive mode is there is an added dampened response in the flight layer in order to provide a more stable firing platform. In fact, all controllers have a dampened response. As you can see in this example, where first the mouse is moved about the screen frenetically, the response on the screen is mimicked by the pilot's hand on the flight stick. You can see that the response is dampened. If we do the same thing with the joystick, where the stick is rapidly moved in random directions to maximum deflection, the response is also dampened. It is more apparent in interactive mode because the cursor movement is not dampened or smoothed unless the user chooses this in control options for mouse. This conclusion seems to be in contradiction to Whitesnake's video showcasing that interactive mode has more smoothing. However, the issue highlighted in this video can be attributed to the interactive mode flight layer being limited to a circle rather than a square. The clamping of the maximum rotational value makes pitch changes at maximum yaw much less pronounced. On a side note, you'll notice that with the joystick and look-ahead mode, the gimbal aim cursor is smoothed to a very high degree, making frenetic or twitch adjustments impossible. We've broken interactive mode into separate elements that seem to be working in tandem in order to explain all that interactive mode does, dispelled misconceptions, compared it to other functions for the same and other controllers, and explored its user-defined parameters. But that doesn't completely explain what interactive mode is. In order to get all of interactive mode working together, it has to be done on a single layer. It is one layer that combines all of these elements together into a unique control mode. The function of interactive mode is to give the mouse one-to-one aiming while influencing pitch and yaw as an abstract and passive function while the user is aiming, which results in the ship responding to the user's aim in a way that without interrupting the user's focus on aim, the target is constantly being returned to the dead zone, where aim is not only the uninterrupted focus, but also uninterrupted by ship rotation, while simultaneously allowing the player to stop aiming and actively control the ship for flight and return to aiming again. The purpose of this video is to define interactive mode as best we can as we understand it. We've tried to withhold any praise or vilification of the mode as a means of control, as it's easy to find misinformation, editorializing, and melodramatic reports of it practically anywhere, and I'm responsible for a lot of that, so I hope you find this information as merely that, information, in which we've tried to be comprehensive in our explanation. I'd like to again thank BF Manticore for taking the time and effort to create this video. It has been as educational for me as I hope it has been for you. As always, thanks for watching. Neb, out.